Ladies and gentlemen and children of all ages, the play's the thing. With your host, Judy Sleed. Special guest, Carol Wenig. Now here's Judy.
Love me in Paris.
Oh, it's so delightful to hear my name mentioned 3 times. So I have a wonderful playmate today. The plays, the things I have to have playmates.
Indeed.
Carol, how are you?
Well, thank you.
Well, I'm so happy we were able to get you here. You've been working on it for quite a while. And you seem like such an interesting person. You're very worldly. So I met you first at the Jewish Center,
Yes.
and then I met you at the gallery,
Yes.
where you discovered this lady who did the paintings. You saw her pictures at a
Montauk
showing in
Art Fair.
Montauk.
Yeah.
So how did that go? How come? What did you see in those paintings?
Oh, well, the artist is Roz Cole,
Yes.
and I am something of an art collector and certainly an art lover,
Yes.
and have been for most of my life. And so I'm always looking for art, and I'm always going to fairs, museums, galleries, fairs, wherever I am. My first stop is going to be at something related to art. And I live in Montauk, part-time in Montauk, and there is an annual art fair in the Village Green. And I go every year, and this August was no different, so I went to explore. And there was one booth with one artist that just attracted me, and I looked at her work and looked at it, and then I walked away, and then I came back, and then I walked away, and the third time I came back, Roz popped up, and she said, "You like my work?" And I said, "I like your work very, very much," and wound up buying a piece. And she does these wonderful, free-flowing sketches. And I liked them so much that I took my piece that I bought, loving it, got in the car and went to visit a friend of mine who runs a Bacalupo art gallery in Montauk, Westlake Drive, back near the harbor in Montauk. And I walked into the gallery and I said, "Look what I just bought." And he liked it as well. And it was his idea at that point to see if he could talk to the artist, Roz, and arrange a one-man show with her, which they did. And it's running right now, and I visit it all the time. And if I had any more wall space, I would be buying more Roz Cole. They're wonderful. They're whimsical and black and white sketches.
That's what it is,
They're delightful,
whimsical.
whimsical,
Yes,
and
yes.
charming, as she is. So that's become a treasure. Yeah.
Did you discover any other artists?
No.
No, just one and only.
My
God.
I don't think so. I have bought pieces, many pieces, but I've never had that more intimate connection with an artist that I have with Roz. So this was a wonderful adventure for her and for me.
I wondered what got you to like it.
Her work, or
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, because it's
Because
sophisticated in its
yeah.
own way. It's very New York. I mean, her pieces are so interesting because on the bottom of almost all of her pieces is the Waldorf Towers, which she happens to live, and she uses their stationery. And that appealed to me tremendously. It seemed very,
Yeah.
again, it was whimsical and it was charming.
Yes, that's great. So, you said you live in Montauk part-time, another time you live in New York.
Yes.
So how did you get to Montauk?
Years. I've been in Montauk for not living the way I do now. My lifestyle has evolved into what I love now, is with a Manhattan, Montauk lifestyle, and I commute back and forth weekly. But prior to that, we owned a condo in Montauk, which we just used pretty much as a summer retreat, 30 more or odd years. So how I got there 30 years ago, I have no idea, but there I was on the beach and loving it very much. Now it's more of a part of my life. I've created a life around the Montauk part of the week as well as the Manhattan part of the week.
So where were you before you came to Montauk?
I had a home in Huntington for 35 years.
Hunting.
and lived there, raised my children there. Had an apartment in Manhattan at one time, and the condo in Montauk as well, but really lived in a house in Huntington.
But before that, when you were a child, where were you born?
Brooklyn. Can't you tell?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Yes.
I think
everybody in the audience is going to applaud. Brooklyn.
I think so. Brooklyn is. There is something very wonderful about Brooklyn.
What part?
Actually, several places in Brooklyn. But I was raised in what was called the Bushwick section, which is not usual. That's not usual for a nice. But I went to Thomas Jefferson High School and Brooklyn College for graduate, undergraduate, and graduate school. So I was a Brooklyn girl without question. Spent a lot of time in Manhattan, always, even as a child. But home base was Brooklyn. And I have very fond memories of it. I still think it's probably the most real place you can be.
Brooklyn. Well, I lived in Brooklyn at one time. I lived in Flatbush.
Oh, Flatbush was very fancy.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
But it was very nice.
Oh, yes.
Yes, of course, I could say I live in Brooklyn. That always gets a nod from everybody.
Well, you know, I grew up with Ebbets Field and the Brooklyn Dodgers and all that wonderful. That's not replicated anywhere else and hasn't been since. Very special.
And when you went to college, what did you major in?
I was an English major. And I can hear Garrison Keillor making fun of me. But yes, I was one of those, an English major who graduated not wanting to teach.
Oh, that was my next question.
Never. No, actually, I can't say that. Not never. I was not a teacher. I'm not a teacher. But I've done some teaching.
So you didn't aim for anything after you finished college?
No, I had the luxury, or perhaps it was the foolishness, but I'm not sure how to define it. But I went to school with the hope of having a wonderful education, and much too irresponsible to think in terms of a career. Oh. And so somehow I got away with that, and then got married very, very young. So I really didn't ever face reality.
That's a career, marriage.
It's a career.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And it was.
It was. Well, a lot of girls did that in those days. They just wanted to be a housewife and mother.
Yes. It's very, I was very happy to do it, no regrets about the years that I spent at home as a wife, mother, running a household. Wonderful. Absolutely.
You probably are a very good cook.
I can't remember. I think I probably
You don't do it anymore.
I don't do it. I do it on Thanksgiving. Oh. But those days are gone. I'm leading the bachelor life now since my husband passed away, which is now 18 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so now I'm a bachelorette who phones in for food.
I knew some people who used to do that when I lived in New York. I lived in so many places.
Yes.
This half hour is not enough to mention. But how old are your children?
Well, I have, let's just say they're old. I have 2 sons and 4 grandchildren. And my oldest grandchildren is 12, so
yeah,
you know, you can
well,
figure.
I have adult children too.
Oh, so.
And I understand they don't live here.
Well, I have one son, and his family live in Manhattan, and I see them very regularly. And then I have a son, Jason, who lives in Florida, Fort Lauderdale. And so I travel there very often. Almost every other month, I'll go to Fort Lauderdale just to be with him.
That is nice.
Yes.
Yes. So, what did your sons do, and how did they do it, since the mother didn't encourage them to have a career or anything?
Well, I didn't say that. That you just made a leap. No. And let me correct, I was home with the boys, but from when they were growing up. But from the time that they were, I guess, college age, I had lots and lots and lots of careers or adventures, let's say. I never had a full-blown career. I had mini careers or a string of life adventures. I think that might be more appropriate. But as far as my sons are concerned, they have outstanding careers and
well, of course,
advanced degrees. There's no question.
I made a big mistake when I said you. I mean, your husband must have been working, or he was also just leisurely.
No, not quite. No, my husband was a very, very interesting man who was something of a Renaissance man. And so in the 28 years that we were married, we also had many careers. He was a scientist. Had a PhD in toxicology. So he was a scientist. He was brilliant, actually. Mm-hmm. Yes. But he was a very interesting man and something of a Renaissance man, as I said. So he was a scientist. He was involved and worked for a pharmaceutical company. When I met him, he actually worked for Cornell Medical College. He went on to years in politics and then he owned his own pharmaceutical research and development company, and we shared many, many things. So when he was Commissioner of Environmental Protection for the town of Huntington when we lived there.
I can't even say those things.
Yes. And so I must say, we did many things. Not nothing, but many things.
Many things.
Many things, yes.
So now that you are all by yourself, the children are out of the nest, so what do you do for fun? Or what have you been doing? What was the most interesting thing that you would say that you did?
Judy, I have done so many, and I'm very fortunate to be able to say this, I think, but I have also done many wonderful things and continue to do that. I have taught poetry.
Oh,
years ago.
Just a little while ago, you said you're not a teacher. Now you're telling me that you are.
Well, I wasn't a teacher in the formal sense of having a classroom.
I know.
I was a wandering minstrel. I would just pop up places and visit
always
schools.
told everybody that you are very modest. Yeah.
You know, if you start me, I will
You forget
tell
all
you.
your talents.
But, yeah. I mean, you forget some of the wonderful adventures you've had when enough years pass. And then when we sit and talk about it and I start to think about it, there's a nice, lovely stream of adventures.
I knew that about you. I knew.
Thank you. I think that's good. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I ran a theater. I founded and ran a theater for
Where?
about 10 years in the Huntington area, again, in that area.
That's where you lived at the time.
We lived in that time for, as I said, 35 years. And so in those years, I did many things. And theater is another passion of mine, as art is, we mentioned. And so I had the opportunity to run a small local theater.
Oh, they are nice.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I mean, there were hardships, there were always stress, always panic, and always hysteria, and absolute joy. Love theater very much. I even love bad theater because there's so much to be learned from it. So I love it, and that was another adventure.
Brooklyn, I forgot, I also lived in Bensonhurst.
Yes.
And there was a local theater that I was involved with, backstage. And then when I moved to, I lived in Baldwin for my married years.
Yes.
And there was a couple of theaters, like local theaters. I was always flocking over there to do things.
To do things. Yes.
Yeah, because I love the theater too.
Yeah.
So your function over there was what?
Producer and director, never on stage, The
But-
one time I was on stage was an emergency when one of my actors got sick at the 11th hour and I had no choice.
You know, I did that once. Oh, but didn't you, any writing or
Yeah, years ago. I haven't written for a very long time. but
play? You wrote a
I wrote a
play?
play when my children were little and I was active in the school. And I wrote a play and the drama teacher liked it so much that he produced it with the children.
Oh,
And so it was, and it wasn't a children's play per se, but it was
Yeah.
done by fifth graders. And it was thrilling.
you liked it?
It was, how thrilling is that to see something
Yeah.
you've written, you know, played?
Yeah, it is,
Whether
yeah.
it's by 10-year-olds or not, it was still a production. And it was, as I say, it wasn't a children's themed play either, but he thought it would be appropriate enough. And that was very exciting. But I
So
really haven't
did
done
you
it since.
select the plays that would be, that
Yeah.
were performed?
What we found was that the community would support us and come to see our plays as long as we did very popular shows. And we did a lot of Neil Simon shows. We couldn't really afford to do musicals because you have to buy the libretto and it starts to get somewhat expensive for a very small theater group. But we were able to buy some, well, certainly some offbeat shows. And I did, I remember doing Skin of Our Teeth, Thornton Wilder, but I loved it. The audience preferred Neil Simon. So we did a
yeah,
lot
I
of Neil
know.
Simon comedies, and I had a wonderful troupe of actors. And we were very successful within the confines of what we were. So it was a fabulous 10 years of doing that.
I can imagine.
It was
Did you ever
lovely.
go to Guildhall?
Sure.
Did you see any naked stage productions?
Not recently, no, I haven't.
Oh, they are not
for a while,
naked,
no.
don't worry.
Oh, I wouldn't worry. I'd rush, but but no, I haven't.
It's,
of late.
they do some original plays and
Yes.
then some others that they had seen that didn't become famous.
Yes,
So they do a lot of readings.
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I go there quite a lot,
Oh.
and it's very good. They're very, you know, talented people.
I'll have to put that on my list of to-dos because it
Yes.
sounds wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm surprised you never went.
I'm just
Well,
busy.
this naked stage was first, they started it maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I was one of the first ones to go.
Oh,
And I was, I think, one of the first ones to present a play that I had written. And they put it on, and of course I invited everybody. And at that time,
Yes.
this was in the very early stages, they said I had the most audience. So, but now you
I
can't
wish I
even
had been there.
you can't even get a seat now. It's so, especially now
Yeah.
it's under renovation, and they have the readings in that little space up until the whole stage is finished.
Yes.
But lately, as I said, you have to get there really early to find a seat.
Please let me know when the next one is going to happen,
I
and I
will.
will be there. I'd love to. Yeah.
Yes, it's great. So, did you ever study to play any instruments?
Oh, I was a guitar player,
A
folk
guitar-
singer and guitar player.
Now, there
Of
you
course,
go.
of course.
She doesn't do anything. So where did you learn to play the guitar?
In Brooklyn, and private teacher. Well,
Brooklyn.
yes, in Brooklyn, sort
A
of in
private
Brooklyn, somewhere in
teacher.
Brooklyn. But yeah, I played with myself. I played many, many, many years ago. I couldn't think of what to buy my husband for a birthday present, and he had a marvelous ear for music, which I didn't. So I bought him a guitar. I thought it would be a wonderful birthday present.
Yeah.
He wasn't quite as enthused as you might have expected. So he said, "Would you like it?" And so I had the guitar, and I had to learn because it wasn't exactly a piece of sculpture. It was necessary that someone
you felt
play it.
so much you should
Someone
play
should,
it.
and
Yeah.
so I did. and loved doing it and did it for years. I still don't have a great voice, but I have enough of a voice to do folk music if I watch the range and keep it within a narrow range. I can sing a folk song.
About an octave, would you say?
Maybe.
I used to have a very nice singing voice, and it's gone.
Well,
It's gone, but I recorded it, so I could listen. I said, was that really me?
oh, yes. Yeah, well, listening is never fun, for me anyway.
No.
When I hear myself speak, even on a tape machine, what I hear is the vestiges of that Brooklyn. And so
I don't
I have to live with it.
This is funny.
That's wonderful.
Well, I'm a foreigner.
Yes. Good. That's just...
Do you detect
Most
any...
accents are considered beautiful, except Brooklyn, but it is what it is.
Brooklyn is authentic,
Very much so.
Yes.
Very much so.
And,
Absolutely. And these days, as you know, I'm very active with the Jewish Center of the Hamptons as a member of the Board of Trustees.
Yeah.
And so it's a very strong passion of mine of late to studying and being very actively involved in that capacity, and that's something relatively new.
What are your duties as a trustee?
Well, beside the general business of making sure the temple is sound, I particularly am interested in ritual and in various projects, additional projects. I've acted as liaison with the literacy volunteers, which is really quite wonderful, where volunteers from the Jewish Center of the Hamptons work in the John Marshall Elementary School as volunteers reading with children. I started doing that and then became the liaison, and really passed that off when I became vice president, because there's just a limit to what you can do. But I do have an announcement, if you'd like, and I think that we will be talking about it a lot as we get closer to the summer, but this is going to be the Jubilee, the 50th year since the incorporation of the Jewish Center of the Hamptons, and we're going to have a year or many, many months of celebrating the Jubilee.
Oh, that's great.
Isn't that wonderful? And
Yeah,
it'll be with
we
the
really have
community,
to
it'll
have
be with the
a
Jewish
lot of
Center.
balloons.
I didn't bring one with me, but we're not ready to inflate the balloon yet. But I am so delighted to tell you that it will be a great celebration.
Of course, if people don't know where it's in East Hampton.
It's in East Hampton.
East Hampton, New York, Long Island.
Yes.
Yes.
And I didn't bring a map either, but
This show goes all over the United States.
is that right?
Well, yeah, I take it as many places as I
That's
could.
wonderful.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Terrific.
And how long have you been a member of this synagogue?
Maybe 10 years at this point. But I've learned so much there. It's become another one of my passions has been to learn Hebrew, to chant Hebrew.
Really?
And to be actively involved. It's something I've never done before. And
Yeah,
so
this is very worthy, and I just love the rabbi and the cantor.
yes. Very special, aren't they? They're very, very wonderful. I'm hoping that the whole community will get to know them better. I know that the cantor's been here a very long while.
Yes.
The rabbi's relatively new. But he is an extraordinary person. And
Very
perhaps
down to earth.
in the course of celebrating our Jubilee year, and we will be doing that with the community as well as with our own congregation, and perhaps more people in the community, will get to know him, because he has a lot to offer.
He does.
Beyond
he
the
certainly
confines of the Jewish Center. He's worldly and very, very
Well, that's what got me
progressive.
to the synagogue.
Is that right?
The rabbi just went once, and I said, okay, I'm here.
Yes. And it gets better and better.
Yes.
And it's,
Yes.
yeah,
it
it's
is.
excellent.
So would you say you met a lot of interesting people in your travels?
Of course.
We don't have
Without
time
question.
to name all of them, but just a few.
Oh, no, I name no names.
You name
I can't do that. I wouldn't know where to start. But another thing we hadn't spoken about is that in the course of all these adventures I have had, there was the political piece. And of course, through those years, my husband ran for office, political office twice, and he lost both. So I am very well seasoned by the agony of defeat.
Oh, really? I
Yes.
never thought of it that way.
It's very painful when you run a political campaign and lose.
And
It's
you
very
lose.
painful.
Well, you should expect that because
And
there's two choices. Either you win or you lose.
Yes, and as they say, winning is better, not always better for the family and not always better, you know,
Yeah.
be careful of what you want kind of thing.
Because a lot of work
But-
goes into it.
Oh, yes. And, but running those campaigns was a tremendous education, and it was wonderful. And in retrospect, of course, it's 20 years later, I can say that it was all good. At the time, I don't know that losing feels wonderful, but, but in the
Never.
course of that, I met so many political people, from Mayor Koch and Governor Cuomo. I can't even think of all of them now, but Rosalind Carter. You know, the whole political scene at the time, which again is, what, 25 years ago or more, probably more. So that was another interesting a piece of adventure in my life, all of which are cherished.
Adventure. Just very quickly, I want to ask you, do you
Yes.
have any siblings or
No.
no? And what you mentioned what your parents did. I'm wondering who you take after.
So am I. My dad was an upholsterer for many years, but as a child, he really grew up in the upholstery business. And you don't. My mom, I could talk about forever. I don't know that we have time to talk
No,
about
we
my
don't.
mom.
Well, you could come back at another time and let's talk some more. You're very interesting.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you for coming on my show. And I want to thank Lee and all the underwriters. And this was a wonderful half hour.
It's been a great pleasure.
Goodbye, everybody. Don't forget to tune in. Look at the listing, the play's the thing. The play's the thing.
How appropriate.
Yeah, that's how I started. I thought I would just interview these local actors here so they could get some exposure.
I was going to ask you, how did you start?
Yeah, well, actually, how I started was I'm also interested in plays and movies and whatever. And they gave a course here once how to do the cameras. And I said, okay, I don't know how to do it, but when I finished the course, they said, okay, now you could have a show of your own.